Rakesh ji, when was the last time we had budget talking, possible expectations on obesity, electric vehicle adoption, artificial intelligence? These are subjects that were alien to the budget. But before I come to you, the Bahi Khata that we were talking about.
Much awaited shots there of the Bahi Khata, which is now in a tablet, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
So, as I said, forms have changed.
This is the e-Bahi Khata.
It's the e-Bahi Khata. The forms have changed. It's digital today. The names have changed, forms have changed, but I think the traditions continue there.
Oh yeah, fantastic visuals. Every single time this visual comes, the hopes in the hearts and minds of people watching this goes up, isn't it, Rakesh ji? What is going to be inside that red color Bahi Khata? But I'm just curious, you've seen budgets over decades right now. Obesity, electric vehicle adoption, artificial intelligence, these are subjects completely alien to the budget, isn't it?
Absolutely. Good morning, Shweta and Krishna. I think, it's phenomenal that the budget is trying to keep track of the changing political and social polity in terms of changing landscapes, and we are happy that it is being able to capture challenges and opportunities in these domains. But it's also possibly an attempt to connect budget with the larger mass population, because generally there's a view that budget is boring, it doesn't impact people directly, it's more for the economists and more for the educated elite. In that sense, this particular budget, there are a lot of expectations with AI already being talked about in the economic survey. But these are intents, so we'll have to see how exactly they match in terms of the outcomes and what are the outlays and outcomes in the budget. Interesting, see, Krishna, budget is a big media event. Let's face the reality and put budget in context. Most of the big ticket policy decisions are generally in the last 20 years, more so last 10 years, have been taken outside of the ambit of the budget. So in that sense, budget has lost much of its relevance in terms of being a policy document.
Okay.
But still, it remains a big ticket accounting statement, and also it carries forward the intention of the government in terms of the reform agenda. That's right. What I am personally looking at. My first budget was the historic budget 1991. The Manmohan Singh budget. That was my first stint with the budget, being a young reporter.
Oh, what a budget to begin your career with.
Absolutely. So, as I said, that is the reason possibly I'm saying, with lament that it's lost much of its steam.
It's not the same as it was, but the excitement is also palpable, Karthik. I mean, you've been tracking what's to come in the budget. There is a long wish list as far as various sectors is concerned. But what exactly are you eyeing this budget should cater to?
Yeah, so I think before I answer that, Rakesh sir had the momentous 1991 budget to start his career. The first budget that I covered was 2004. And this was soon after the elections, and the dream team, if you remember, Rakesh.
That's right.
We had Montek Singh Ahluwalia, Planning Commission, we had Manmohan Singh Prime Minister, and P. Chidambaram as the Finance Minister. So
historic.
Dream team. But the visuals on the screen right now are the dream team and the budget makers. We have the Revenue Secretary, we have the Expenditure Secretary, we have, the MOS Finance, we have the Chief Economic Advisor. So this is pretty much the budget team, and I think, it's a little late now to try and second guess what is in that budget. But technically, what should be in that budget, I think, the priorities of the government need to be fairly clear. And I think, some of that is coming through expression, whether it's the economic survey that we've seen, or all the conversations that experts are having around the budget. I think three critical areas stand out for me. And while we can discuss AI, we can discuss obesity, we can discuss health, but I think number one priority of the government is to have a flight path for the debt to GDP ratio to really come down to 50%. I think that is a big priority for the government right now. We need to ensure that the debt to GDP in the economy comes down. Now, along with that, and I'm calling it the impossible trinity. So there are three aspects here. So first is a reduction in the debt to GDP. Second is job creation. So you need to ensure that there are more jobs created in the economy. Now, who's going to ensure that? Is it going to be the union budget? Is it going to be state budgets? Or is the onus going to be on the private sector to create jobs? So in the impossible trinity, debt to GDP ratio, then job creation, and the third is a boost to exports. We need to ensure that our export competitiveness continues to rise, and that can happen, of course, by incentivizing the private sector, but also reducing the compliance burden, the regulatory compliance burden on MSMEs, who in any case have been battered by the US tariffs.
All right, so exports are obviously one of the key areas that India will be focusing on. Rakesh, I'm very surprised, Karthik, the first two that he brought up was debt to GDP and unemployment, because those are very contentious issues, largely not talked about. The numbers are often, even in economic survey for that matter, deep within the policy documents, very hard to decipher. But there's been a lot of conversation on unemployment because, poverty, unemployment, inequality, those continue to be some of the challenges and roadblocks that India faces. So before I come to your wish list, and I know you have those 9 points, 9 things that you want from the budget, let's talk a little bit about unemployment, because even as we say, India continues to be the beacon of hope, one of the fastest growing major economies in the world, clocking a 7.4% growth rate in financial year 26, according to economic survey. The budget document today, Nirmala Sitharaman, could suggest about 7.9 to 8%. That's what we've achieved in the first quarter. But, all of these are just numbers until we attain enough equality in this country, and various data points in the last 1 year pointing to the fact that inequality seems to be a distant dream when 10% of India earns about 60% of its income.
Absolutely. I think, the government is seized of this challenge, and these are very vexed problems that India faces. What we call jobless growth, not enough growth for Indian youth who are educated, converting our demographic dividend into a demographic liability. In terms of being cognizant of the challenge, I think this government is seized of the but the big ticket solutions, are they forthcoming? Not really. We've been struggling with this for the last about 10 years. Every budget we've been, so to say, touching this and skirting this issue of unemployment. There was this ELI scheme last year, but of course it hasn't really grown to the level it was expected.
We have no idea how much it's grown.
No, there are numbers floating from 10,000 to 1 lakh.
That's right, but not enough numbers, not enough data there.
Shweta, we'll have to be, it's not easy. There is no, overnight button that we push and then we'll have employment in this country. It links back, as I mentioned in my wish list, to reforms on land and labor. So there is need for capital in the private sector to kick in, which has not happened in the last 10 years in the proportion it should have happened. Government, right from independence onwards, has a stated inability to give as much jobs as there are required. So in that sense, that is a challenge. But before we come to the deep dive into the potential provisions in the budget, I thought we must flag a couple of things. One, that this budget is for the first time without a full-fledged finance secretary.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we also have an economic affairs secretary who's also looking at the budget division, Anuradha, if I got the name right.
Anuradha Thakur.
Anuradha Thakur. So in that sense, the women Shakti, Nari Shakti driving it. And a word about Nirmala Sitharaman. She's quite understated if you see. We have had some flashy finance minister like Chidambaram. He did some great budget. The dream budget belongs to him. But she's been very mature and calm, and she's got 3 big ticket decisions to her credit. That is GST reforms as recent as September. Then she got the income tax, the biggest reform in personal income tax happened in the last budget. And then before that, she brought about the corporate tax cut. So when we review finance ministers of this country, say 20 years down the line, 30 years down the line, Nirmala Sitharaman, whether you like it or not, will go as one very, very powerful minister who, left her imprint on the political economy map of this country.
And 9 budgets back to back, who
Yeah,
can beat that?
One little, because Chidambaram also has done 9 budget, but that does not include an interim budget.
Absolutely.
She has an interim budget.
Too.
So, and we don't, we hope that next year again she's there on the, in with the Bahi Khata that she has. So she'll have the record matching
so 7 full budgets to interim budgets, and that makes her,
Absolutely.
at par. That brings her at par with the Chidambaram.
All I can say is that every time there's a budget, especially in the last decade or so, or the next decade and a half, as a Tamilian, I'm just like, heck, it happens that every single time there's a P. Chidambaram or a Nirmala Sitharaman presenting budget. I always look forward to the quotes from ancient Tamil poetry that comes in the budget speeches, which both Chidambaram and Nirmala Sitharaman have been doing. So it's fascinating.
And Tamil Nadu going into polls, Krishna, so I think all the more reason that this year it is going to start with a Tamil poem, or maybe Bengali for all you know.
Could be both. Could be both.
Because there are 2 Tamil-speaking places that are
Or
going to elections.
Malayalam for that matter. I mean, how are you
No,
understanding?
I would say that 2 because Puducherry and Tamil Nadu both speak Tamil, so there's still a majority in this Tamil who's going to poll.